So it's time to start. Let me start my timer. Okay, good morning. I'm Alice Allen, the editor of the Astrophysics Source Code Library, and thank you for coming to this tutorial. Please feel free to post questions in the chat, or you can just speak up. This is supposed to be, and I hope is, an interactive session. So I don't want mine to be the only voice that's heard. If you have not yet taken the polls associated with this session, please go ahead and do that now. That will guide some of what we do. I'm looking at the results now to see if they've changed substantially. Ooh, yeah, we do have a horse race going on. Yeah. So as I said, I'm the editor of the Astrophysics Source Code Library. And in this session, you will learn, I hope, what the ASCL is, the Astrophysics Source Code Library, or ASCL, what it is, how to bring records up. There are several ways that are obvious and some ways that are maybe not so obvious. You'll also learn how to find software using different methods, not just in the ASCL, but other places too. You can pull ASCL records up from numerous places. We'll talk some about citation tracking and preferred citation, how this works, how to find a code's preferred citation, which you will want to use if you need to cite the code in something that you've written or something that you're presenting, how to create a metadata file so that others know how to cite your code, and you want your code cited well. There are lots of ways to cite code that are bad ways and that don't show up in citations, and there are good ways, and where to put that information as well. If time permits, we'll also cover one or more of these subjects, which is why I asked you to take a poll. Looks like the first and last are in a horse race, and others are not so interested in how to download the contents. That's okay. And please have these browser tabs open. You want to be able to get to these different resources readily. The first is the Astrophysics Source Code Library, of course. The second is ADASS, the NASA Astrophysics Data System. So if I could see a quick show of hands if you do not know what ADASS is. That was something that didn't occur to me to put into a poll, but if you do not know what ADASS is, please raise your hand in the using Zoom. Okay, so we have a couple people who are unfamiliar with it. Okay. Thank you very much. So you can type the URL that's on the screen, or maybe somebody can put it in chat, perhaps. I don't know if I can do that from where I am.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. And then Google. So you want those browser tabs open because I want you to follow along and do things with me when we're doing that, when we're working. So the tutorial is intended to be interactive, learn by doing. So follow along, do the steps that I do when I'm live, and you can see how badly I type. You can do it without the typos, however. So the ASCL, the Astrophysics Source Code Library, is a software registry. It started as a repository and can still and does still take code deposit, but it's mostly a registry for software that's used in refereed astro research. We store some code, and when we store code, we do assign it a DOI, but generally we link to where code is. So we point to where it is, where you can get the software, rather than house it ourselves. And we provide a unique identifier, the ASCL ID, and the structure of this is very similar to archive.org's because we used their model, we liked it, with the ID starting with ASCL : and then a numeric, and that's the year and month that the ID was assigned to that code. It's not the year that the code was created, but it was when we indexed it, and then an incremental number. So every month since I started working on, since the ASCL was created in 1999, every month in which code was submitted, there is an entry for that month in the ASCL. So there might be only one code in some months, or none if none were submitted, but that's generally how it goes. So does anybody have any questions about the ASCL ID? And you're allowed to interrupt and talk, so please feel free to do that. So let's look at the homepage of the ASCL, which you should now have open in a tab. And I'm going to switch over to that. So this is the homepage, I hope. That's what it was last night. Yes, nobody's added anything. So notice that the menu goes across the top. It's a very simple menu. There's a search box in the upper right corner, and the 10 most recently added codes are shown on the homepage. So what I want you to do is to find the record on this page for the software package Born Ray Trace. Born Ray Trace. So scroll down and find it. And click on the title. This is a typical record in the ASCL. This is the metadata that we store and serve to the public. You see the ASCL ID shows up here. There's a title, and notice that there is something with a colon after it. That's typically the name of the code or a moniker for the code, a short alias, which we'll talk about. So this is the title. All of that is considered the title. You'll see authors up here, the next line down. There's a very short description. We aim for about 3 to 8 sentences for the description. We want you to go to the code site itself for more information if you need more info, and we supply a link to the code site here. Oh, right here. So if you click on that, you'll go to where you can download this software. We typically also include one or more links to an article. Now, the article can be one that describes the code or one that the code is used in. Not all software has a code description paper. One of the things that ASCL does is allow people to get citations for their codes without having to write a paper for the software. So we list one or more articles, and they're labeled either described in or used in here. ADASS, the NASA's Astrophysics Data System, has its own numbering scheme, and that's they assign unique identifiers called bib codes. We rely on ADASS for a lot of things. You see that our links here for the link for the paper goes to ADASS. It's a great resource, and we use it and build on top of that. So we have a link to bib code. Did anybody click on it? Anyone? Doesn't work, does it? It's because it's a new record, so it's not found. But we assign the bib code according to ADS's rules, the ADS format, and next week or so, that link will be live and will go to the record in ADS for this software package. ADS ingests the ASCL records and then assigns a bib code to them so the records can be found there. This particular software package does have a preferred citation method. Most software in the ASCL does not, because most authors do not list a preferred citation on their websites, on their code sites. So if you were looking for how to cite this software, you would use this resource. And again, we point to ADS. We like that ADS provides the bib tech for this, and we don't feel the need to do it ourselves. Does anybody have any questions about the record? So that's basically the record. if you have questions, either post them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. Yes, so James has asked, ASCL does things monthly. We're actually uploaded to ADASS. ADASS gathers us every Friday, I believe. So because we change records, we curate our records and there are changes to them. So they ingest our stuff once a week. But it's towards the end of the month that I do a big push to get codes that have been submitted to the ASCL and software that we have found as we look for it in. So you'll see most of the new entries appearing at the end of the month. Thanks for your question. So records find their way into the ASCL in two different ways. ASCL editors, there are three of us. Kimberly Dupree, who's online now, is one of them. So there are three editors. We go out and actually look for software. A couple of other people do too. Peter Tobin, who's also online in this session, also finds a lot of software. So we go out and look for software in research and write up entries for it. I vet all of the entries personally, so to make sure they meet our needs and our criteria. And then we put them out typically at the end of the month. I tend to do that towards the end of the month. And then we write to authors and let them know we've registered their software, ask them to look the entries over, and let us know if there are any errors. But what we really like is when authors submit their own software to the ASCL. There's a submissions link, and you can go there to read more about it. We can cover that towards the end, though. That's not what I want to concentrate on right now. But people do submit software to the ASCL, and we really appreciate that. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So you've already learned one way to bring up an ASCL entry, and that's to click on its title. But there are other ways to bring it up as well. One is by using the ASCL's URL, the URL for the entry. For example,
Alice, I don't see the next slide. We can still see the code record tab.
Oh, let's see. You don't see ways to bring up ASCL records?
No, we've got the ASCL code record for born ray trace still. That's better.
Oh, that's disappointing to know that it does that. That makes sense, but okay, thank you. You may have to remind me then to change tabs. So I'm sorry about that. So you can use a URL to bring up an entry because every code has an ASCL ID. So I've put a link in the chat, which you can click on to go to light curves entry. Let me switch tabs again. So this is what you should be seeing. Notice that the ASCL ID here appears in the URL. We could also have the full ID in there, ASCL : that works as well. But I usually just use the short one. So let's go back here. So using a URL is one way to bring it up. You can also use the short name or alias. We do not guarantee that this will always work, but we find it extremely handy to be able to go to type ascl.net and then the name of a software package and bring up the record. And you'll see that when you do that, that the URL resolves to the ID, to the ASCL ID. So that's really handy. So go ahead and try Nemo, the package Nemo, like the fish. Type that in to your own browsers and bring up the record for that. Does anyone have questions about aliases? No. All right. So another way to bring up records is to simply browse them. So you can browse by going to the browse button or the browse link, and you'll see that you get 100 codes at a time on a page, that they are listed by title. So they're alphabetical by title, which is why two dust is at the top. But you can also change this order over here. And I'm often looking for most recently added codes. So if I click date, I get them in order, but I like the most recent ones. So I change the order. So the most recent is at the top, and you can change how it appears. So right. So browsing. So how many codes have ASCL IDs? At the top of the browse page, somebody posted an answer in the chat. How are conflicts handled? James, do you mean conflicts with names? Because codes have more than, there might be two codes with the same name. We can look. So if you, this is for aliases. So if we use comb, for example, we see that we get a disambiguation page. If you type in dragon, singular dragons are popular. So you get two, but multiple dragons are not. If you type dragons, you get only one code. That was a good question. Thank you. And some codes will have two aliases. That's unusual. But one, Snoopy is also very popular. We've got two entries for it, and I know there's yet another Snoopy code out there that doesn't meet our criteria, but it is out there. So notice there are two codes here, but this one has camel case, which means it might also have an alias, another alias, and you see the record does have that alias because the package is also known as SNPy, not just Snoopy. So that was a good question. Thank you. So how many have ASCL IDs? Did anybody type in anything into the chat? Please do. If you go to browse, right there. So when it says 69 submitted, it means these codes have been submitted to the ASCL, but they don't have ASCL IDs, typically because we're waiting for a paper. So, and we'll leave entries on for a long time while we wait for things to be done. If they're there a really, really long time, we will sequester the record until we have all of the items that we need to process it. So let me go back here. So browsing is another way. So you've already answered the question. We already know the answer to how many codes have ASCL IDs. You can also bring records up with the author's name. So I'm going to click on this record. You notice that that all of the authors for a record are links. If you click on the name, you get other records by that author. So you can decide there, and you can make this wider or more narrow. If you want to make it a wider search, get rid of the first name because people may be in by their initials. They may be identified in different ways, sometimes with or without a middle initial, etc. Andre's done a pretty good job in being consistent with how he's listed. So go ahead and click on a record, browse through a couple of records. Let's see. Okay, Karen has a good question, but I thought the idea for the ASCL was to allow software to have a citation without needing to write a scientific paper for it. Yes, but the software has to be used in refereed research. So the paper that we might list for it, or that would allow it, we want to see evidence that the code has been used in research. So that can be a paper that uses the code, even though it doesn't describe it. Does that answer your question? You can unmute if you'd like. Yes, all right. So that's why a lot of our entries have used in links for papers rather than described in. So did anybody find an author with more than one entry? I'm going to wait until somebody answers. So somebody please do. I would say, okay, Karen, we'll talk about those. Thank you, James. Yes, so Keith Shortridge has a number of codes in the ASCL. All right, so I'm going back to my slides, right? So we also have keywords. I went a little fast there. So you can also bring up records with keywords. This is new to the ASCL, and we're going to improve this. But if we go back to light curve, thank you, Kai. Yep. So if we go back to light curve, let's look at that record again. And the link is in the chat if you want to use that. You see that at the bottom, there are keywords here. This is relatively new to the ASCL. A couple of years ago, we were funded by NASA to add keywords to our entries, to make their entries, to make NASA's NASA software that we index, that's used in research, more discoverable. So we tagged it with keywords. The keywords get carried over to ADASS, so you can search there. But you can also search here. If you want to look at all the Kepler codes, for example, you can click on Kepler, and you find all of the keywords associated with the ASCL at the top. And then here are the codes that are associated, that have the Kepler keyword. So, and you can click on any of these. If you click on Spitzer, you'll get codes associated with Spitzer. Anyone have questions about that? And we need to improve the discoverability of the keywords, and we'll be doing that soon. And then you can also do a full text search. As you saw at when you looked at the website, you see there's a full text search box up in the upper right-hand corner. So you can search there for anything you want. You can search for author names. You can, and there you see lots of software written by Peter Tobin. You can search for tessellation. Let's see. Let's look for stellar evolution, since I've already got that in there. So anything that mentions stellar evolution. So this is a full text search on the abstract and names. And you can search for the code itself. So we can look for Nemo again here. See, I can type. But you see that also brings up the Nemo software, but it also brings up all the records that mention Nemo. So can anyone suggest a way that we might restrict this just to Nemo? Ooh, we have questions. So I'm going to answer questions while somebody tries to answer the one I just asked. How can records be updated? The source code moved to, such as when the source code moves to a different location. So we do curate, we actively curate our records. Kim does a fabulous job in doing link checking of all of our site links to see what goes bad, and then follows up. If a link is bad consistently over time, then we write, usually Kim writes to the code author to say, hey, this link isn't working. Can you please supply us with a new link? We can go out and look for it. When we're adding codes to the ASCL, we do a push for, if a code is on a website rather than, if a code is on an institutional website, rather than in GitHub, for example, we will push the page to the Wayback Machine. So the Wayback Machine will index it. And if we can't find the code, if the author ignores us and doesn't send us a new link, if the problem with the link never resolves, then we may point to the Wayback Machine. So that's one thing. Let's see. There are other questions. Let's see. How can records be updated? So you can suggest a change to us, and the best way to do that is simply to send us an email. Sometimes tweeting at the ASCL works as well. I've done lots of stuff through tweets. So you cannot change the record yourself. We will change it for you. You can ask us to change it, and then if if you do move your software, we want to know about it, but we'll find out because we do run link checkers on it. We run 2 different link checkers and do curate those links. Should all submitted code be executable and reproducible if the user downloads them and tests it out? Not necessarily. We don't guarantee the quality of the software in ASCL. We do look for it to be source code. It does have to be source code to be registered in the ASCL. And the purpose of this, the main purpose of the Astrophysics Source Code Library is to make software more transparent. If you're reading a paper and a computational method was used, that computational method should be identified. It should be cited. We would like to see it being cited with a formal citation, but it should be at least identified, and you should be able to find the software within a couple of clicks. So that's one of the things that ASCL helps with, is increasing the discoverability of software so you can go look at it. Science is a show me sport, and that means you should be able to look at the computational methods that drive research results. So that's what we want. But we don't guarantee that it will all work. A lot of software is written very quickly for research. That's okay. A lot of software has errors in it. As some people say, your code definitely has errors in it. You might not have found them yet. And that's okay. We don't guarantee perfection. I don't think anybody can do that. If it worked for one paper, it may not work for another. There are different reasons why software may not work on somebody else's computer. Some old software may not be runnable anymore, but you can read through it. And that's why we want the source. That's why we want the source code. Keith asks, can we suggest keywords for our own codes? We have not done anything more than that yet. But I think it would be great if we could attach a lot of keywords, if we could attach a lot of good keywords to software, to the software that we hold. So one of the things I'd like to do at some point is identify the keywords for each entry. We have almost 3,000 entries now, though, so that would be a slow process. And we can talk more about how we might improve the ASCL in a BOF later today that's about the software ecosystem, which includes ASCL and lots of other things. So Suki has asked, getting back to my question, how can we limit our findings if we're doing a search for Nemo? With the title, that's one way, but you can also just put the colon in there. So if you put a colon in, that will bring up just Nemo, not all of the records that also mention it. And let's see. James is asking this question, was this supposed to work? No, where did you get this link? The link that you post. So James, can you unmute and tell me where that link came from? What did you start with?
I got the same. It happens if you just type in Nemo with single quotes in the search box.
You don't need to use quotes in the search box.
But if you try that, that's what you get.
I see. Okay. So single quotes? I've never tried that. Thank you. Yeah. So don't use quotes. Yeah, no, that wasn't supposed to happen, but we never anticipated that people would put quotes around there. And somebody is saying double quotes works. Nope.
Yeah. And if you write, yeah.
That, yeah, so quotes don't work at all. So thanks, I didn't know that. All right, I'm still going through questions here, I hope. Searching on Nemo also finds authors with the string Nemo in their name. That's exactly right. And that's why you can use the colon to restrict it just to the title. Is there any plan to link actions up with GitHub releases, a bit like Zenodo? No, we don't have any plans to do that. The aim is to provide a different kind of resource. So, and we can talk about some of those differences. Okay, thank you. So is that Mark telling me that we might have a security person take a look? Okay, thank you. I will do that. Yeah, I appreciate that. Don't have my connected. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now you're scaring me. So let's continue. If there are other questions, please continue to post them in there. It looks like maybe it. Go ahead.
Alice, there's actually a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Thank you.
Would you like me to read them out for you?
No, I am.
Okay.
Let's see. What's the database behind the scene? It's MySQL. That's what we're using. And it's quite a small database, actually. It's surprisingly small. Is there a guideline on access? We do have some information. I'm not sure what you mean by access. If somebody can answer that, whoever posted that. What's the database? Let's see. And known issues. No, we don't have a guideline. I'm not sure what you mean by a guideline on access. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? And we don't have anything that lists, we don't have an issues log that appears on ASCL. It's not hosted by GitHub or another system that has that. All right, I'm going back to chat. Yeah, we'll look at that. Thank you all. See, this is why it's good to have a lot of people looking at different systems. All right, so let's get back to this. And this is what I want you to do. So you've now learned different ways of bringing up ASCL records. You can click on the title. You can use an ASCL ID in the URL. You have the short names. You can browse. You can click on an author's name to find other software by that author. You can use keywords, and you can do a full text search. So go ahead and do this activity, and I'll give you a few minutes for that. And if you could give me a yes, click on the yes button in options, that would let me know that you're done. Thank you, David, for the link. The link to KXCD. That's good. So we didn't talk about searching Google, but you can use ASCL. You can use Google to search for ASCL records. So please try that too. Somebody's asking how to do a keyword search. So I'm wondering if somebody who has already found this, it can share what path they took to find that info to answer that question. I mean, I know, but how, but. So somebody had a dropped connection and wants to know how to do a keyword search. So can someone else say, please?
I guess I'll just jump in here if nobody else is.
Yep.
I went to the ASCL website and then used the search bar at the top, typed in test, found code that was related to the test satellite, and then at the bottom of the clicked on one of them at the bottom of the page where it says keywords, clicked on the test keyword, and that listed everything that was associated with the test keyword.
And how
Probably
many?
not the quickest way, but I got 12 or 13 records.
Okay. Yep. I think it's 13. I think it's 12.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If you look at the top of the
12.
page,
Yeah.
it'll tell you after the keyword how many entries.
Yeah. Reading always helps.
Well, and that's why we're doing this. So if I look for tests, I don't want tessellation, so I'm just going to type test with a space after it. And this looks, the first record looked like it might be useful for that. So I click on the keyword there, and yeah, 12. So Spitzer has 13. So these are all the codes associated with it. This is, this could obviously be improved. It'd be nice if we could do a search by multiple keywords and all, but you can do that in ADS. So that's one of the things we'll do next, is how to search records in ADS. Yeah, and somebody said I can get there via Google, and that's good. And James has a question that I hope he will answer himself by trying it. I believe the answer is no, but. All right, so let's go back to this slide. So did anyone use Google to find the ASCL entry for Nemo? Most of us have, Google search bars in our browser. If you can give me a thumbs up or say yes or something. Oh. Yeah, Francois says he found more than 20 with test space. So if you go to ASCL and type test space, yes. Down here. Because you'll also get records. You'll get anything that has that in either the title or keywords. So that's good. SQL wildcards work. Okay, Mark, I did not know that. I'm curious what's being returned here. Yeah, I think that does not work well. You might get something returned, but we find test Jackie. So with that, that's interesting. Just via Google works. Yes, so that's one of the nice things. Google also ingests has indexes ASCL just like it indexes everybody else. So a very quick way to search, and I use Google all the time for this too, is I type ASCL in the name of the code, and I typically get the code. Can we move on? Can I see thumbs up for moving on? Yes, no? All right. Starting to come in, I like that. Thumbs down for don't go on. All right. So we'll continue. So we'll look at ADS now and learn how to find some software there. So NASA's Astrophysics data system ingests and indexes information about astronomy from scholarly resources. So this could be astronomy journals, proceedings, data archives, ASCL registries and repositories such as the ASCL and Zenodo. ADS classifies these different resources as different types of documents or different types of records, and they use doc type as the field. So we're interested here only in doc type software, but you can search ADS for lots of different doc types. You can restrict your search to just certain types of resources. Furthermore, ADS classifies the origin or maintains the origin of these resources. So every ADS record has a bib code, a unique ADS identifier, and in that bib code is a text string for the resource that record that information came from. So that text string is called the bib stem. The bib stem for the ASCL is ASCL.soft, with soft being for software. And so it identifies it as a software record. Information ADS ingests often has keywords. Journal articles, for example, often have keywords associated with them. And those are also stored in ADS and can be searched for using the keyword attribute. So we can search for these individually, but ADS has very powerful searching that lets you mix and match attributes. And the three that we're most interested in are doc type, bibstem, and keyword. So we can search ADS using these three fields with these values separately or in combination, and we can do that also to find ASCL records in ADS that use, for example, NASA as a keyword. So let's go to ADS. I asked you to have that tab open, so we'll go to ADS. This is what this looks like. This is the Astrophysics data system, and the home page is search. So let's look at this. So we can search for doc type software. So please do this, and you see it comes up with suggestions. So we're going to choose software. And this, I'm restricting this just to astronomy, but I think that's all it has anyway. So yeah, results are the same. So doc type software gives us over 15,000 records. If we want to find just ASCL records, we could say bibstem, ASCL.soft, and we get only the ASCL records. Now, because ASCL records are only software, we don't actually need to have doc type software if we know that we want just ASCL records. So you see that search is the same. And we can marry this, piggyback onto this to use keywords. And we want a keyword of NASA. So we want to find records from the ASCL that have the keyword NASA in them. And you get 148 results for that. So this implies there's some searching in your future. So what I want you to do is find out how many software entries in ADS have tests as a keyword, not necessarily ASCL, but in general, and answer these other questions. How many total software entries does ADS have? And the bonus question, what's the most cited software entry for doc type software in ADS? So I'll give you a few minutes to do that.
Alice, did you want to switch screens so the
Questions are up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? Thank you. So somebody asks, is ADS down? Seems to be okay for me. It's okay. It's fine for others. Hi, are you able to get to it? Did you try again? Wow. That's funny, Anne. Anne says, they're advertising for a DevOps engineer, so maybe. So James, you supplied an answer to the last question. Oh, but you don't have a mic, right? Can you let us know how you found that? Or not? Can I have thumbs up if you're done with these questions? If you've answered these questions? Or even better, click yes, because the thumbs up is not. Yeah, there we go. Click yes if you're done with these questions, and we'll move on. So I need to get a bunch of these before we'll move on.
So Alice, just quickly, on ADS there was a different number of software entries for tests than on ASCL. Differs by 1. Is that because one of the entries on ASCL hasn't yet been picked up by ADS, or one of the entries on ASCL is still submitted and not accepted?
So that's a good question. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to guess. Let's look at. I'm going to guess that it is. Just taking a quick look here. So this record is probably not indexed yet. Yep. So the difference is that this record has not yet been ingested by ADS because it's too new. I just added it a few days ago. So end of the month stuff, you know.
Fair enough. Yep, makes sense. Cool.
Okay. All right. So does anybody want more time on this? If you do, then give me a thumbs down or no. Otherwise, I'll move on. Okay, so I know one of the answers, the bonus question, what is the most cited software entry in ADS? So doc type. Software. So we can choose how these records are sorted. And yes, so that's interesting. Last night it was apple pie. So that changes often. So good. So yeah, so there's lots.
Enough,
I'm sorry?
Sorry. I was just going to say, interestingly enough, if you scroll down at about number 10 or 11, it's also LMFit, but lowercase and the ASCL link.
Really? Let's see.
Yeah. At least when I did it just now, there was a double up of LMFit. Yeah, oh, 24. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go see. Let's look at this record. So this is the ASCL record. So we can go to publisher. Okay, and their preferred citation method is the Zenodo record. So we can tell people what we list the preferred citation at, which means that the software author has made that information known, probably on the GitHub repo, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people follow that. So that's, we're trying to let people know. That's why we added the preferred citation method field. We want software cited the way an author wants it cited, but not everybody adheres to the author's instruction, the software author's instruction. So thank you for pointing that out. There are lots of ways to cite software, however. So we might find, LMFit is the top for doc type software, but one software package that has had many, many more citations to it is MC, and that's because MC requests that a paper be cited for the software instead of the software directly. So let's talk about citation a little bit. So ADASS matches up information in bibliographies. So it ingests records that have bibliographies in them, such as journal articles, and then it tries to match up the items in the bibliography with resources that it has. So if you've written a paper, an astronomy paper that for AppJ, for example, and had it published, but you have cited a software package that is not generally used in astronomy, is not indexed by the ASCL, is not in Zenodo, and has a journal article from microscopy article, for example, something in biological sciences, you've cited this paper, ADASS is not going to see that citation because it does not ingest that particular journal. And that's generally how indexing works. An indexer will ingest a lot of records, and then when it tries to look for citations, it searches through its own holdings. It can't know about every journal. Well, maybe Google can try that. But so if you want citations to your own software tracked by ADASS, you have to ask your users to cite your software in a trackable way with a resource that ADASS is able to match up. So trackable methods include ASCL ID, Zenodo, and published journal articles, proceedings, papers, etc. And if you want your software cited and cited well, make this citation information your preferred citation info, easy to find. I looked at the ASCL just a couple of days ago and did I don't even have to count. We have a little dashboard for the admins that show us how many software packages in ASCL list a preferred citation and how many don't. Most software packages in ASCL do not list a preferred citation method, and that's because the software authors have not put a preferred citation, preferred citation information on their own websites. So that's a problem. So one of the things that everybody can do to improve software citation is state how you want your software cited, and preferably use a good method. So I want you to go find, if you're writing a paper and you need to cite software, most journals require you to cite the software that you use. So you do need to know how to do that. You can use the ASCL and to find preferred citation information. You can use software, you can use the software sites themselves, the GitHub repos, etc., to find them. So these are the questions 8 hours. I'd like you to, oh my gosh. I need to speed up, but these are the questions I'd like you to answer, and I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this. Let's see. I see a question in chat, but I'll answer it in a few minutes after you've had some time to answer these questions. And if you have answers to these questions, go ahead and post them in the chat so I know you're working through the questions. Thank you, Karen, for posting the answer to the first question.
You're welcome. You did ask for it.
I did. And James has answered with the link. Thank you, Francois. Yep, Nemo likes to cite the ADASS proceedings paper. Yep. Peter, you're asking good questions and I'll answer them in just a minute. I want to make sure people have time to finish getting the answers to the questions on the screen. Does anybody have an answer to the last question about Mattice and Comb? If you've found answers to these questions, please use the yes button under options in Zoom to let me know that you're done. It's going to take more than 5 people to give me that thumbs up or okay to get me to move off this slide. So okay, so let's look at these. Is that okay? Is it okay for me to move on here? So TurboSpectrum's preferred citation method, we can go to the ASCL and type TurboSpectrum and search for it. We can look at the entry and we see that their preferred citation method as listed on the ASCL is the ASCL ID. We can go to their GitHub repo and see that that's how they want their software cited. So when we list a preferred citation, what we're listing is what the author has identified as the citable artifact. This is not ours. We don't decide what the preferred citation is. The author does. So we can go to the record for TurboSpectrum, and if I make my window a little bit wider here, we can see that it has 218 citations over here. You can see that. Okay, and you can see that there are links to there are related links over here. That's useful for ASCL, for Zenodo records, for all kinds of records. So let's see, how do the authors of NEMO want the software cited? Well, Peter's here, so he could just tell you, but they are using, as James pointed out, NEMO uses a paper. Their preferred citation method is an ADASS paper from 1995. That predates the ASCL by 4 years. So they want to continue to gather citations to that paper. And you'll see again, this is the paper. This is to the paper resource. There's the ADASS. But over here, you can then also go to the ASCL record easily there. How do the authors of Apple Pie want their software cited? So let's look for Apple Pie. So James and Kieran took different approaches to finding this out. One is to click on this link for citation information. This is on the GitHub repo, and it says to use both the ASCL ID or the ASCL record as the citation, and it also says use this Zenodo entry. If you go look at the Apple Pie page, you'll see that it does not have the information about the Zenodo link on there included as citation. And that this often happens where there's conflicting information about what to cite. So my advice, if people were to ask me, is to ask the author what they really intend. And if you don't have an answer to that or don't want to get an answer to that, then go with, I would cite both, because they clearly, at least in one place, said that they want both cited. So I would do that. And then these last two, the question was, Let's look at this software, NetEyes. So their preferred citation is an archive paper, which is fine. And that is a descriptive, that's a description paper. And if we look at the GitHub repo, do we have, how do we know that that's how they want it cited? We can scroll down maybe. They list the attribution there, but they also list it in a citation.cff file here. Citation, and we'll talk about that file and another. Let's look back at comb. Is that the one I wanted? Yes, comb. Which comb? Yeah. Let's do that. And we want this one. And we'll go to the, so it says here to use the ASCL ID, but if we look at the GitHub repo, does that information appear here? It's not in the README, but here is a codemeta.json file. So these latter two files that we looked at, the citation.cff and codemeta files, are structured metadata files. They're machine actionable while still being human readable, and they're particularly useful for describing software. Citation.cff was developed specifically to improve citation of software, not just in astronomy, but generally. So that's that comes out of that. So I'm going to look at questions real quick here. All right, so David asks how I define a good citation method. A good citation method to me is one that lets you identify, is one that's trackable. So you don't want to use a link to a GitHub repo as a citation. That's a bad citation method. It may get a reader of the paper to your GitHub repo, which is great, but that citation is not going to count. The author of that software will not be credited with a citation if you just put a link to a GitHub repo in the bibliography, because ADASS does not ingest GitHub. So what you want to use is some kind of identifier, that some kind of resource that ADASS ingests where you can, so that they can track the citation. Link to a GitHub repo by itself is not going to be tracked because ADASS doesn't ingest it. So a good citation method is one that's trackable and that gets you to the artifact that is actually being cited. In this case, software. You want to be able to find the software from that. And Zenodo is one way to do that too. So we've got some answers here. Let's see. Peter asked about software in a notebook, how to cite and find it. Well, if you have the notebook in GitHub and the software is, and the notebook has been used, that software has been used in refereed research, we can create an ASCL entry for it. Notebooks are another way of representing code and showing the source. As long as you show the source of your code and the code is used in refereed research, ASCL can create a record for it. And so can Zenodo. Zenodo can also create a record. You can push your GitHub repo to Zenodo and get a DOI for it. So Peter, I hope that answered your question. If not, let me know. You also asked, do you have a guide for submission? Best practice when you want to register your code? Yes, we do. And if I go to ASCL here, you see that we have information on submission here. We have a form that you can fill out here. And we do have a bot challenge. So the galaxies say physics is fun. So you do have a form to fill out. we have also tried, let's see, tried submission by codemeta.json, and that's not working at the moment. Although we can try it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So you submit the URL to a codemeta.json file and get that. I'm going to finish going through the questions. Keith suggests his favorite advice for people writing software is to try to come up with an unusual name. It makes searching so much easier. Yes, it does. Searching for Jupiter, a Jupiter code is a code named Jupiter is going to give me a lot more stuff than. So yes, please try to come up with a unique name or something that isn't going to give a lot of false positives. Okay, so let's see. So James said, right, okay, so yeah. So there's a discussion now online between Gus and James about GitHub supporting GitHub does support only citation.cff and not code meta. So let's get back to the slides. So we did that. So these metadata files. So a metadata file is information about information, data that provides information about other data. So the ASCL supplies information about software. So we have metadata files about software. This metadata that we have can be rendered in multiple different ways. And these two file formats, codemeta.json and citation.cff, are two structured metadata file formats. You can create these files using the ASCL. These overlays, the overlay that the ASCL has works only with entries that have ASCL IDs and only from ASCL URLs, so not the aliases. So if you want to create a metadata file, you can do that from the ASCL entry just by adding /citation.cff for citation for CFF files or /codemeta.json. So go ahead and do that. Just to see what these different file formats look like. And I'll put these links in the chat if I'm allowed to. No, I'm not allowed to. This is the citation.cff file for MADICE. And if I want to look at the code meta file, this is the code meta file. So you see that we have some placeholders. The ASCL generates these files, but they are intended to be editable. So we would want you to take this text and edit it as needed. You can copy and paste that somewhere so you can edit the text, put in your ORCID IDs, for example, put in any related links, put in a DOI if you have a DOI for your software, etc. So we do have placeholders for information, for metadata that we don't have, so that your code meta file can be more complete. So there's why did I do this? That's our metadata. So so you can generate these files for your own software. Even if your software isn't in the ASCL, you can generate a code meta file for a code meta file or a citation.cff file for any software in ASCL, and then replace the metadata in there with your own software's metadata. It's a good idea to add what we're trying to do is encourage people in astronomy and in other disciplines, actually, to put code meta files or citation.cff files on their GitHub repos. So these are machine actionable. And I'll talk a little bit about the difference between these about these two files. So code meta files have more information about the software in them. Citation.cff files are made for citation. A couple of groups, a couple of resources, entities, organizations, whatever, are using codemeta.json to represent software more fully in a machine actionable way, so that we can then harvest this information. So what we'd like to do for registries such as the ASCL and registries in other disciplines that are like the ASCL that list software, we're trying to get these resources to render their metadata in codemeta.json format, so that we can collectively do other things with it, such as search across disciplines for software. We think that would be useful. So there are other ways of generating code meta and citation files, but this is one way to do it. Use the ASCL. And what's the best place to put this information? Where it's easy to find. So you can put it in the README at the root level of your repo, on the home page of your code site, whatever. So make this information very easy to find. Somebody should be able to look at your home page for your software and find within one click how you want your software cited. I know Gus has a lot of stories about where he finds software citation information as he works on AAS. He works for AAS journals. And I also have lots of stories about where I find that information. And sometimes it's just buried. Don't bury this information. Make it easy to find. Before I move on, so we'll talk a little bit about the differences between ASCL and Zenodo, because that's what the polls dictate. Let's see. Yep, that's the item that won the horse race. Does anybody have any questions about anything we've already covered before I move on to talking about the differences?
So there is a question in the Q&A, and there's only 5 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. What's the database behind? Let's see. How to deal with the deadlock of submitting a paper while no ASCL entry is possible, as the paper is not yet accepted. So we do accept papers. We do accept software that is used in research that is submitted for refereeing. So if you have a paper that you're about to submit and you want an ASCL ID, send me the preprint. It does not get shared outside of ASCL. We just want to make sure that the software is represented fairly in the paper. That means identified and in the paper, so somebody knows what software you're talking about. And we will assign an ASCL ID just before you submit the paper, or after you've submitted it and before it's been reviewed. So we can do that. We recognize that that's a problem. So we'll time it to work with you. If you tell me that your paper is not going to be submitted for 4 months or 3 months, that nobody's written it yet, we are not going to list your code in the ASCL until there is a paper that you are going to submit. And the reason that we do that is we want only software that's used in refereed research. We can take papers that are submitted because astronomy has a very high acceptance rate. If we were talking about economics papers, economics has a very low acceptance rate for papers. So if we were doing this for economic software, we would not accept just submitted. But astronomy does, if you submit a paper in astronomy, it's probably going to be published someplace. So we will accept that because that just puts a few codes at risk overall. I'm going to. Okay, so here are some of the differences between ASCL and Zenodo. They're both good resources. They do some of the same things and some different things. So the ASCL is specific. We're only for astro research software, whereas Zenodo is general. It will accept artifacts from all different disciplines and all different kinds of artifacts, papers, proceedings, musings, blog posts, etc. We do not require code deposit, and whatever it is you want indexed or in Zenodo, it does require code deposit or whatever other artifact you're depositing there. So we accept, but don't require. We do accept software for deposit, but we don't require it because we can point to where it is, whereas Zenodo definitely requires that you deposit it. We assign an ASCL ID to all of our entries, to all of our accepted entries, but DOIs only to the deposited code and only to the actual digital artifact. We do not assign DOIs to ASCL entries themselves, to the metadata record. Zenodo assigns DOIs to all entries. When you submit to ASCL, your record is going to be, the information that you submit is going to be evaluated by human editors. We're going to look to make sure that the information is correct, that it's that we're going to look at the software, make sure there's source, etc. And Zenodo assign before we assign an ASCL ID, and Zenodo assigns DOIs automatically. When you submit, you get a DOI immediately. There's no human interface there. I'm sure they do check entries to make sure that you filled out the right fields and that what's in the fields, complies with the rules for those fields and all, but there's no human editor there. We actively curate our records and do change the information in our records. When links go bad, we try to correct the defects in that, and we have a couple of different ways of doing that, which I'm happy to talk about afterwards. Zenodo does not curate its entries and does not require even that you have a good description, for example, of the software. It's just the way they work. It's two different ways of doing things. We, in general, do not assign new ASCL IDs to versions. So if you have an interim version of your software, we don't care. You can still cite it with the ASCL ID, even if you're 3 versions away from what you originally did. If you make a significant change to your software that warrants a new ASCL record, then we can issue you a new ASCL ID, and we will link the 2 records together. There'll be a link saying, this is the previous version, and here's the newer version, so that you don't lose that, but you would then be collecting citations to one or the other ID. Zenodo does assign new DOIs to interim versions. If you're doing this via GitHub, you push a new release out and they will give you a new DOI, and they have something called a, what's the term? A project DOI that represents the entire project that you can have cited, or you can have the interim versions, the DOIs for the interim version cited, but they all get collected under a project DOI. Citations to ASCL entries are trackable, and citations to Zenodo are also trackable in ADASS. And that's all the time we have. I will answer questions, though. I'm happy to hang out if that's okay. But I want to say thank you, first of all. to the people who support the ASCL, to the organizations that support the ASCL. Michigan Tech is where the ASCL is housed and where it was started. The Heidelberg Institute for Theoretical Studies gives us donates money to the ASCL every year, which is extremely helpful at getting us to things like this conference. And the University of Maryland provides services in kind to ASCL. I'd like also to thank ADASS for letting me do this tutorial, for accepting it, and also to all the softwares who write and share their codes, and also to you. Thank you very much for coming. And if you want more information, I'm here all week. So, hit me up. And if you want to become involved with the ASCL, if you want to work on it, if you want to become an editor, let me know, because we could surely use some more volunteers to edit and maintain the resource. One big difference between ASCL and Zenodo is Zenodo has a lot of money. So ASCL runs mostly on volunteer services, so on volunteer service. So that's another difference. And I'm done except for answering questions. Is that okay, Mark, if I answer questions, or Kim, whoever's?
Yeah, that's fine. Do you want me to, I guess I'll leave the recording on if there are questions to answer.
So let's see, it's published by the, let's see. So there's a particular question from Rob. I don't know. The referees mostly work for MC. Is MPC considered a referee journal? Is what I would ask. Does ADS show it as as refereed? So we don't index monthly notices of the AAS. Those papers that are accepted by, not monthly notices, sorry, research notes of the AAS, RNAAS, is not a refereed journal. Somebody does look at the entry to make sure it's reasonable and then publishes it. It's a rapid publication process. So research notes of the AAS, but we don't accept, it's the same with JOS. We don't accept a JOS paper only for ASCL entries, because JOS is refereeing the software, but it's not a research paper. So it's refereed, but it's not used in research. So we don't accept that either. So I'd have to look at that, Rob, and we can talk about that afterwards, I hope. Is that all the questions in chat? I mean, in Q&A? And there, oh gosh, okay, let me go through Q&A. There's a lot of stuff here. So there's a discussion between James and Gus about what GitHub support means. GitHub supports the citation.cff format, which so it recognizes that, but it doesn't recognize JSON citation files yet. So I think that's something that we should talk with them about. What the CodeMeta group is trying to do now, there's now some governance around CodeMeta, and there's work being done to try to get the fields that are in CodeMeta that are not in schema.org, which is a huge metadata schema, trying to get the fields that are used in CodeMeta accepted into schema.org. So recuration, which is if you submit that. So Gus says very tiny comment recuration, which is a big advantage of ASCL. If you submit to a community in Zenodo, then the community manager can review and request edits to the material. Similarly to our journal, if you deposit anything in Zenodo, we review the data and metadata and provide feedback on fixes that you should make to your record. So that's good to know. So Zenodo does offer communities, and so there is a little bit more oversight there than just pushing your GitHub repo into it generally. So thank you very much. If you have more questions, let's move this out of Zoom, I would say, unless you want to ask them right now. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending. I'm surprised that people showed up, frankly. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alice. I'll stop the recording and end the Zoom session shortly.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will post a link to my slides on the ASCL. If you look at the ASCL, you'll see that there's a news area, and that's where I typically post things like links to slides from presentations. So I post monthly codes, but I also occasionally post other information there. So, and I left you with a lot of links. So thank you all so much.